Hello, beautiful and amazing people. How are you guys doing this evening? Welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. I am your host, Christina Yvette. I am the founder of 7 Ways to Wealth. So thank you so much for joining me this evening. So if you want to know the steps that you need to take in order to create a trust, if you want to know about asset protection, if you want to know about generational wealth and how to actually establish a legacy efficiently and effectively, you have come to the right place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into a short presentation. It should be about 90 minutes, and then I'll open up the floor for Q&A so that I can answer any and all questions that you guys might have based off of the information that I went over during this webinar. But before we get started, I just want to check the pulse in the room. How are you guys doing? Where are you guys tuning in from? So currently I am in Atlanta, Georgia. So where are you guys tuning in from? Put it in the chat. All right, I see Tennessee in the building. All right, awesome, awesome. All right, Chicago, nice. South Carolina, nice. Georgia, right up the street. Okay, New York is in the building. Hey, New York. All right, I love that. My mom is from the Bronx. So thank you guys for being here this evening. So let's just dive right in. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Christine Yvette. So I'm the founder of 7 Ways to Wealth. And I am a licensed financial professional. I am a licensed real estate professional, and I am a trustee. So I have been a trustee for 11 years. And what I'm going to do is I am going to teach you from a standpoint of trusteeship. So I am not an attorney. I am not a CPA or any of those other things. Okay. So I'm going to teach you what I know about operating a trust. And I'm going to teach you the steps you need to take in order to establish your own trust so that you too can become a trustee. So with that being said, I just want to first let you guys know how I became a trustee, right? So obviously, the way that I became a trustee, it was 11 years ago, and I was a registered nurse at that time. So when I was a registered nurse, I was pretty much in the rat race, living paycheck to paycheck, extremely frustrated. I had a 1-year-old baby that I was not taking care of because I was working 12-hour shifts, 5, 6 days a week. And every single time that I got paid, it just wasn't enough. So I was going out and getting payday loans and just trying to make ends meet. So I was extremely frustrated, and I told myself that I couldn't just depend on my paycheck in the hospital. So one day I was driving to work, and on the radio, this guy named Dan Merrill, he says, "Do you want to learn how to flip houses?" So I'm like, yeah, I want to learn how to flip houses. So he's like, come to my seminar this weekend. So I signed up. I paid $200 to go to the seminar, and I went Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I learned so much about real estate that I never knew in my entire life. So 6 months after that seminar, I established my LLC, and I end up buying a property. So this property was a little beat up 2 bedroom, 1 bath. I bought it for $89,000, and my hard money lender, he gave me 100% of the money. So I didn't have to come out of the pocket at all, and didn't have to come up with my own money in order to purchase this property. So I looked him in the face and I said, "Will you be my mentor?" He's like, "Absolutely." And he's like, "But you bought this property all wrong." And I said, "What happened?" And he's like, "You need to take this property out of the LLC and put it into a trust." And I'm like, "What is a trust?" I did not know. I was young. I was 25. I didn't know what I didn't know. So at that time, he taught me the ins and outs of trusteeship and how to establish a trust and how to move that property from the LLC into the trust so that I could protect the property, because I had never done a real estate transaction before, and this property was being renovated. And anything could happen to this property, right? Because there's contractors and subcontractors working, doing construction. Somebody could slip and fall, you never know. And I didn't want to put myself in a vulnerable position to where someone was going to take the property from me. So that's why I transferred it into a trust. And that property, I end up selling it for $235,000. And so that was my first step towards financial freedom was real estate and was becoming a trustee and learning the ins and outs of how to navigate using the trust in real estate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to educate you on what a trust is so that you can do your due diligence, do your research, and see if this is the best fit for you and for your family. So allow me to share my screen here. Give me one moment. All right, so let's just dive right in. So the first thing that I want you to know is what a trust entity is, because a lot of us, we've heard the term trust, but we're not familiar. We don't know, exactly what a trust is, right? And so what I want you to know is that a trust is a living, breathing entity, just like how you are a living, breathing entity. So a trust can do anything and everything that you can do as a natural person, which is awesome, right? So now the way that this entity comes into existence is through a contract. So you have to establish that contract and you have to legalize that contract in order for you to go and operate the contract. Now there's several different parts to the contract. Now the ones that I want you to know of right now is the declaration where you're declaring what it is and what it is not. So when we are declaring this, we're saying, hey, we're setting up a trust by contract. And what we're not setting up is an LLC or a corporation or a general partnership or any of those other types of joint ventures or contracts, okay? Then the other part to the contract is the bylaws. That's where you have the terms and conditions or how you want the trust to be operated. So that's what we call provisions. So the person who's going to be operating the trust is the trustee. And ultimately, that's the position that you want to be in. So now that we understand that a trust is a contract, let's talk about the different parties involved in the contract, okay? So there are three different parties involved. So the first one is the grantor, and sometimes you might hear terms like trustor or settlor. And the grantor is the party that actually establishes the trust and places the first asset into the trust, okay? And that asset, we label it as a donation, and they are establishing this trust for the benefit of someone else or something else. So that benefit is going to be for who we call the beneficiary or the inheritor of the trust. So the second party involved is the trustee. So this contract is going to be between the grantor and the trustee for the beneficiary, okay? So the trustee is the controller of the trust. That's the person who is going to be managing the assets that are inside of the trust, who's going to be signing on behalf of the trust, and who's going to be operating the trust on a day-to-day basis. So they do all the hiring, all the firing, pretty much everything that the trust needs done on its behalf, okay? And the next party is the beneficiary. So that's the inheritors of the trust. So those are the individuals that are going to be inheriting the assets that have been placed into the trust. But that's only when the trust is terminated. So in the meantime, while the trust is still existing and functioning, what's going to happen is the beneficiaries are going to receive distributions and they're also going to be receiving gifts, okay, from the trust. So let's talk about the different types of trust. Now, what I want you to know is that there's hundreds of different types of trust. So once again, you have to do your research and your due diligence to figure out the best type of trust for you, okay? What I want to do is I want to give you a list of categories that every single trust falls under. So the first category that I want to give you is express versus implied. So what we mean by this is that an express trust is a written trust where it's on a contract, it's in black and white, you print it out on paper, you can physically, tangibly touch it, you are going to physically sign it, right? Versus an implied trust means that there was a verbal agreement that happened and it stayed verbal. There is nothing in writing, it's not on a contract. So the next category that I want to give you is simple versus complex. So a simple trust is shorter in nature. That means that there's less provisions. But the thing about this trust is that the trustee is required to distribute all the money that's inside of the trust, and the trust cannot hold trust funds. Versus a complex trust, it is longer in nature. So that means that there's more provisions, right? Those terms and conditions that we were talking about. And because it's longer in nature, that means that the trustee can actually hold trust funds and doesn't have to distribute all the money that's inside of the trust. The next category that I want to give you guys is discretionary versus non-discretionary. With the discretionary trust, what we're saying is that the trustee has full discretion to be able to make decisions for the trust that are not embedded inside of the contract. Versus non-discretionary means that the trustee is not able to make those decisions on behalf of the trust if it's not inside of the contract. So the next category that I want to give you is statutory versus non-statutory. So every single state has its own laws, and those laws are called state statutes and codes. Now, when it comes to the trust, if you have a statutory trust, that means that those state statutes and codes are embedded inside of the contract. If they're embedded inside of the contract, that then means that that trust is limited to where it can only be operated in that one state. And it's going to be required to be registered publicly with that state, which means that everyone is going to be able to look up your trust. Versus the other type, right? So non-statutory means that there are no state statutes and codes embedded inside of the contract, which means that you can use it in the entire nation, meaning all 50 states plus all of the US territories, which is really good for you because then you get for that trust to remain private because you're not required to actually register it with the state, okay? Now, the last category that I want to give you is revocable versus irrevocable. Now, when we are referring to revocability and irrevocability, we're only referring to one party. That one party that we're referring to is the grantor. So for a revocable trust, we're saying that the grantor has the ability to be able to make changes to the trust or amendments. They're able to remove and appoint trustees and beneficiaries. They're able to terminate the trust at any point in time. And if they were to place assets into the trust, they can take those assets back. Now, typically with a revocable trust, the grantor is also going to serve as the trustee and the beneficiary. So remember in the previous slide, we saw that there's three parties. So what we're saying here is that that one individual is going to serve as all three parties. So because that's the case, this actual trust is seen as their alter ego. So it's not seen as a separate entity from them. And that trust is actually going to operate under the grantor's Social Security. So unfortunately, with that type of trust, your assets are not protected because that trust is seen as the alter ego. If someone is trying to come after the grantor, they will go after the trust. So the only thing that it can help with is passing assets along, but it doesn't fully protect the assets from being taken away. So now the next type of trust is an irrevocable trust. So with the irrevocable trust, what we're saying is that the grantor cannot make any changes or amendments. The grantor cannot be the trustee or the beneficiary and cannot remove the trustees or the beneficiaries. The grantor cannot terminate the trust, and the grantor, if they were to place assets into the trust, they cannot remove those assets and take them back. So with that being said, because the grantor cannot serve as the trustee or the beneficiary, there has to be those three different parties involved. This type of trust is seen as a separate entity, and it's going to operate with an EIN versus under the grantor Social Security. So that's a good thing because your assets will then be fully protected. And that's ultimately what you want, right? You want full asset protection. So what does a trust actually protect you from, right? So let's talk about the steps that you need to take in order to create it. Now, the first thing is that you have to determine the type of trust. Now, you want a trust that is completely bulletproof. that's going to hold up in court and that's going to protect those assets. It doesn't make any sense for you to establish a trust if you're going to put assets in there and the assets are not protected. So when you are thinking about this and doing your research, I want you to consider this, right? I just gave you 5 different categories. So a bulletproof trust that's actually going to hold up and be what we call impenetrable is a trust that is express, that is complex in nature, that is discretionary, that is non-statutory, and that is irrevocable. So that type of trust that you're creating should fall under those 5 categories in order for your assets to be fully protected. Now that you have determined the type of trust that you want to create, let's move on to step 2. So in step 2, you're going to actually name the trust. Now you're going to name the trust anything that you want, but please don't make the biggest mistake that I see a lot of people make. So they end up naming the trust after themselves, which is you doing the trust a disservice, you doing your family a disservice, and you doing you a disservice, right? And the reason being is because remember, we are setting up this trust for asset protection. And so we do not want anyone to know that we're associated with the trust. So if your name is John Smith, you don't want to call the trust the John Smith Trust. So what you want to do is you want to use very unique, distinct names, right? So for example, this plant behind me, right? This plant is called a monstera. So let's just say that I wanted to name my trust Monstera Estate, right? So no one is going to know that me, Christina Yvette, is associated with Monstera Estate. Why? Because my name is nowhere attached to the name of that trust organization, right? And so you want to think about things like that so that you know that you're going to be operating in what we call obscurity. So now that you have named the trust, right? Another thing I want you to know is that you don't have to have the word trust in it. You don't want people to know that it is even a trust entity. Let their minds wander and think that it is a corporation or some other type of entity. So you have to appoint the different parties involved in the organization. You have to appoint a grantor, you have to appoint a trustee, you have to appoint beneficiaries, which usually are your children or your next of kin. And then the other most important position within the trust is you nominating a successor trustee. So you have to have your succession plan in place, meaning that you have to know who's going to take over after you in the event that something happens to you, meaning in the event that you expire, in the event that you become incapacitated, in the event that you decide that you want to resign, right? There has to be an individual that's going to pick up where you left off, because if you don't have a successor trustee in place, then the trust is inoperative, right? And then that means that the beneficiaries have to drag the trust to court, which is not what you want. So now let's move on to number 3, where you're going to actually create the trust agreement. So remember, we said that this is a contract, so you have to actually establish the contract. Now, one thing that I want you to consider is special provisions that you're going to put inside of your bylaws. So one of the provisions that we stress is spendthrift provisions. So those spendthrift provisions are where you can control the money from the grave. That means that you're going to put restrictions in place so that the beneficiaries don't just blow all of the money, because I'm telling you that that is exactly what they will do. So for example, one of the spendthrift provisions that we put in place is a age restriction, right? Because let's just say that they're getting $5,000 a month. A 2-year-old might not need $5,000 a month, but a 20-year-old might need $5,000 a month. So with that being said, we put an age restriction in place so that we know that the beneficiary has to reach a certain age before they'll be able to access their distribution. Another one that we put in place is an education restriction, to say that the beneficiary has to get, this minimum level of education. It could be bookkeeping, accounting, it could be some type of financial literacy or budgeting, it could be a college degree, an associate's, a bachelor's, whatever it is that you want. It could be mentorship, apprenticeship, on-the-job training, a skill, a trade, anything, right? So you can also put distribution restrictions, right? So meaning that you can tell them what they need to spend the money on and what they cannot spend the money on. So for example, you can tell them, hey, you can spend the money on education, your living expenses, maybe real estate, maybe crypto or stocks or anything like that. But you cannot spend it on gambling, tobacco, lottery, illicit drugs, right? Or anything random like that. So you get to put those restrictions in place, which is ideal because I will tell you that the beneficiaries, they will spend that money, right? So now let's move on to number 4. So now that you have established a contract, you have to then notarize that contract, okay? Now it's going to be requiring 2 signatures. It's going to require the grantor signature and the first trustee signature, okay? And both of those signatures are going to be witnessed by a notary public, and that notary public is going to place their seal. That's what legalizes the trust so that you can start operating the trust. So now that the trust is legalized, you want to start operating it. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to open up that trust fund account. So when you're opening up the trust fund account, right, you can go to any financial institution that offers trust accounts. And I'm here to tell you that not every single bank or institution offers trust accounts. So you can go to banks, credit unions, or even brokerages, and you can get accounts like a checking account, savings account, money market account, cash management account, brokerage account. So all of those accounts are considered trust funds. And what you're going to do is you're going to bring 2 pieces of information with you. You're going to bring the certificate of trust, which is proof of identity that the trust exists. And then you're also going to bring the EIN number that you're going to get with the IRS. Okay, so that's that 9-digit number that you're going to be using for the trust so that the trust is able to operate in society as its own entity. So once you establish that trust fund, you need to fund it, okay? You need to put some money in there. So you might fund it with $100 or $1,000. It just depends on the amount of money that you want to put inside of the trust as well as what the bank's minimum is. So some of these minimums are 0 and some of them are 1,000, 3,000, 5,000. It depends on the financial institution that you decide, hey, I want to establish a banking relationship with them, okay? So now that we have funded the trust, then we're going to move on to the next step. So the next step is for us to transfer assets into the trust. Now, this is where I see people make the biggest mistake because they never legally transfer the assets, right? So what they'll do is they'll just list the house or the car or the cash inside of the actual contract, but they never actually transfer it. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say that we're talking about the house that you live in, right? So you have this primary residence, and when you bought that house, last time I checked, they gave you a deed. And that's what's representing your ownership interest in that property. So what you have to do is you have to redeed the property from your personal name into the name of the trust. And then you have to record that deed with the county recorder's office. Once they record it, then it's going to update the public records to show that that property, that house is owned by a trust. So if you never deed the property over, that means that the trust doesn't own the piece of real estate. The same thing goes for a vehicle, right? Remember when you bought that vehicle, they gave you a title, right? Unless the title's with the bank. So if you have the title to your vehicle, that is what's representing the ownership. So you have to retitle that vehicle into the name of the trust so that the trust is able to protect that asset. So meaning that if these assets are not in the name of the trust, then they are not protected, okay? So a trust can actually protect you in many different ways and from many different things. The number one reason why you want to set up a trust is for privacy. The second is definitely for protection from bankruptcies, divorce, foreclosures, heavy taxations, lawsuits, probate, things like that, right? So let's talk about divorce really quick, right? So a divorce is a transfer of wealth sometimes between 2 spouses. Now, the beautiful thing about that is that when you are going through a divorce, right, you are going through the court system and they are going to include everything that's in your personal name. meaning your properties, whatever's in your bank account, your 401k, your pension, all of that stuff, right? So they're going to go over a list of your assets that are in your personal name and your liabilities. Now, if you have a trust, right, you have to understand that you are not the trust and the trust is not you. So you're the one that's getting a divorce, not the trust. So if you have property, if you have cash money, if you have anything in there, everything that's inside of the trust is protected because the trust cannot be pulled into your divorce. So just think about that. Now let's talk about heavy taxations because a lot of us are giving away half, right? Especially in states like New York and California. So when it comes to taxes, the thing that I need you to know is that the government, right, specifically the IRS, they tax you when you die. So there's something called a death tax. There is also something called an inheritance tax. So when you die, you and your assets are going to get taxed, right? And I bet you didn't know that. Why? Because you're still living and breathing. So you want to avoid those types of taxes, right? And actually set up a trust so a trust can protect you from that. Another thing when it comes to heavy taxes is that if you're a W-2 employee, the IRS will allow you to donate to your trust. And you can donate up to 60% of your annual gross income into the trust, which is very beneficial to you because now instead of you being taxed on 100% of your income, now you're only going to be taxed on 40. So let's talk about lawsuits, right? Because we live in America, which is a very sue-friendly country. And here in America, everybody wants to sue you, meaning your neighbor, your siblings, your employer, your employees, your customers, your clients, everybody. So you have to go ahead and prepare yourself for a lawsuit before it happens, right? A lot of us were walking around here thinking that we're not going to get sued, right? Which is a wrong thought process. So when it comes to a lawsuit, a trust can actually protect you, right? So let's just say that you are a business owner, right? And you are operating a business. So let's just say that you have LLC. Let me ask you this question, right? What does LLC stand for?
Limited liability company.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you so much. So she said it, limited liability company, right? So now if you listen to the actual words that have been used, you hear that the company has limited liability. So if the company has limited liability, who do you think has the other half or the other portion of that limited liability? So you guys come off me, let me know.
The owner.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you for saying that because you are so correct. So, yes, the owner, right? So, whoever is the owner on paper for that LLC is also going to be liable if the company cannot cover whatever damages, right? So, let me just give you a quick example. Let's just say that you have, a real estate company and you are out here renting out property, right? And a tenant has a slip and fall, right? And so they decide to sue you, right? And so they're not suing you, they're suing the LLC, right? And so now they're suing the LLC, and now there's a judgment for $250,000, right? So what's going to happen is that because there's a judgment for $250,000, they're going to go after the LLC. Now, the LLC bank account doesn't have $250,000 in it. So if that's the case, then what's going to happen, right? Well, if the company cannot cover it, then what's going to happen is the judge can very well decide to pierce through the corporate veil. The corporate veil is that itty bitty little piece of protection that you thought that you had with the LLC. So if they are going to go ahead and go ahead and pierce through the corporate veil, then that means that they can go after the owner. So if you are the owner, that means that they can go after you. So if they decide to go after you, that means that they can do two things. They can garnish your wages in your bank account, right? So anything that's coming in from W-2, 1099, and every single bank account that has your name and social security number attached to it. And then they can also seize your assets, meaning the house, the car, the jewelry, the art, everything, right? Everything that you have that is an asset, they're able to seize it. Why? To cover that judgment for $250,000, right? And so you don't want that to happen. So what you want to do is you want to put yourself in a position to where you have a layer of protection between you and the LLC. You do not want to own the LLC directly, okay? That is you doing, that's going to be very detrimental, okay? You're going to be doing yourself a disservice. So what you want is for the trust to own the LLC. So you have to remove yourself from that trust, right? You have to remove yourself from the LLC because the LLC is a part of the public records, right? Everyone knows that you're the owner. All they have to do is go to the Secretary of State's website, type in the name of your LLC, and your name is splattered all over the public records. So you have to protect your identity, okay? And the way that you're going to do that is by setting up a trust and then doing an amendment to the articles of organization, removing yourself and putting that trust as the owner of the LLC. Because now, if we have that judgment for $250,000, then they're not going to go after you personally. They're going to go after the trust, right? And the trust is operating as a holding company, so it's not going to be able to have that much liquid assets in it, right? Which is what you want, because ultimately you are going to be protected personally, and whatever assets that you have personally are also protected, right? So let me show you a quick video.
Just a quick story of why I'm here. I was sued. I lost everything. And when I say everything, I'm talking about a $700,000 house. I'm talking about 4 vehicles. I'm talking about my bank account. I'm talking about my life savings. I believed in having 6 months of expenses put up, saved up just in case anything happened, lost the career and stuff like that. All of that was gone. And there was no protection for me. Then I had my third bout with cancer. I haven't had any income since 2020, since COVID. As I told you, I think yesterday, I've been looking for a way to protect myself because I have children that are going to depend on me. So I would encourage anyone that would listen to anything that has been taught and said by you, please, 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 if you work hard to gain assets, do whatever you can do to protect your assets. Why do you think they've hid this from us for so long? Why do you think they were the only ones that were saying trust fund babies? It was because they were the only ones who were privileged to know this, who was privy to this knowledge. Now we have it through Christina. And I thank you for your level of knowledge and for not being a gatekeeper and for giving us what we need to know in order to make this happen. So please, 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 if you endeavor to get anything in this world and to keep anything in this world, please, please, please protect it. Get your trusts. And I have no reason other than my knowledge and what I've been through. But the only reason I'm here is because I've been through it. So I would encourage anyone.
All right, you guys. So I have a question for you, right? So one, protect your assets, all right? Because like I said, we live in a suit-friendly country. Now, let me ask you a question, right? The house that you live in, if you didn't wake up tomorrow and this house is in your personal name, how do you expect that house to be transferred to your son or to your daughter or your spouse or your next of kin or whoever you want for them to have the house? So come off mute, let me know what you think. How is that transfer going to happen?
Probate.
Okay. Anybody else?
Probate.
Okay. So basically what you guys are saying is that it's going to be the decision of a judge, right? So it's going to be up to the court system for the courts to decide if your son or your daughter get your house. Now you have to understand that this judge doesn't know you. This judge doesn't know your children. But because you've decided not to have your affairs in order, because you've decided to keep that house in your personal name, now they have to go through this process, which is called the probate process. So let's talk about it so that you guys can better understand what's about to happen if you guys stay structured the way that you are. So now, a lot of people, they think, oh, I'm good because I have a will, right? And I'm here to tell you, one, our children, they're losing their inheritance because we are not protecting our assets. So when it comes to a will, right? A lot of people think, oh, I have a will, I'm good, right? A will is a set of instructions that is designed to be carried out in the probate process, right? So it's automatically going into probate, and those are your last will and testament, which means those are your last wishes, right? So a will is a wish list, okay? And in that wish list, you're saying, I wish my daughter will get my house. I wish my son will get my house. There's no guarantee, right? And so with this wish list, right, the difference between a will and a trust is that a will cannot own anything. A trust can actually own assets. A trust is an actual entity. Okay, so even though both of them are legal instruments, one is obviously stronger than the other. And I'm here to tell you that a trust is the most powerful entity in the entire world. Okay, in the entire world. Okay, not just here in America. Okay, so with that being said, if you have this primary residence, let's just say that you have everything in your personal name, right? So you have a house, a car, and cash money, right? That $250,000 that we was talking about earlier. All right. And so now what is going to transpire is that you transitioned. You transitioned with all of this stuff in your personal name. So the first thing that happens is your where you're a resident, right? That state is going to have to create a living estate for you. So meaning that if you live in Texas, Texas is going to have to create a living estate, right? For you, for a dead person, okay? Why? Because you were irresponsible. Because you did not do it yourself. Because you did not create your own estate while you were living. So now Texas has to do it for you. Okay. And so now that Texas is doing it for you, what they're going to do is they're going to transfer your assets into that living estate, meaning that they're going to transfer your house, they're going to transfer your car, and they're going to transfer all that cash that you have in the bank account, right, into that living estate. Now that living estate then has to go into probate court, okay? So now we're in the court system. So the first thing that happens is your estate is going to need a representation by a probate attorney. You're going to collect a lot of probate court fees, and you have a judge. And the first thing that the judge does is the judge is going to pay off your liabilities. So your liabilities, meaning that if you have a credit cards, if you have student loans, if you have, any debt that you owe, all those creditors are going to come after your living estate, okay? Now, one thing that most people do not think about that I want to share with you is the medical bills that they rack up at the end of life. Now, let's just say that you were sitting in the ICU for 2 weeks. That ICU bill alone is $250,000. And a lot of people think, oh, well, I have, health insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, the health insurance carriers, they want to be reimbursed. They want their money back. So they turn into creditors and they go after your estate. And what do you think the judge is going to do? The judge, of course, is going to pay Medicare and Medicaid, right? And so the first thing that happens is all that liquid cash that you had goes straight to those creditors, goes straight to paying your debt off, right? Paying off your liabilities, okay? Now, let's just say that you didn't have enough cash in order to cover all that debt. Well, then what happens is the judge is now going to decide to liquidate your assets. So when we say liquidate your assets, we mean that the judge is going to start to put your house for sale. Sell the car, the jewelry, the art, everything. So when we're saying this, what we mean is, for example, if you look on Zillow and Realtor.com, right, you're going to see houses for sale that are in the probate process. So now what we're saying is that the judge has decided to sell your house, and now your children are going to be fighting inside of the probate court, right? And one, unfortunately, they either fight each other, or two, they're fighting the system to keep mom's house, to keep dad's house, right? And so you do not want that to happen, because now that the judge has decided to sell your property, then the property is sold, then a portion of those proceeds goes towards all the fees, right? Which is the lawyer's fees, the debt, the court fees, right? And whatever's left over is what your children get. So your children, they get the leftovers, which is unfortunate, because last time I checked, we know that we want our children to receive their entire inheritance. We know that we want our children to receive the house, the car, the cash money in the bank that we work so hard for. But because we haven't gotten our affairs in order, because we haven't established our living legacy, because we haven't set up a trust structure, we're just leaving it up to the state. We're leaving it up to whoever's going to do it, whoever's going to handle it, right? Which is detrimental, and that's not what you want. So what you do want is for you to get your affairs in order. So let's just say that you decided to get your affairs in order, right? So you decided to set up a trust, and you decided to, now while you're living, transfer those assets into your trust, right? So you've transferred the house, you've transferred the car, you've transferred the cash money, because remember, you set up a trust fund bank account. You transferred that $250,000 from your personal checking account into the trust fund. So now you don't have anything in your personal name. In your personal name, there is no house, no car, no cash, okay? You transition. Well, guess what? You and your family get to avoid the entire probate process, right? Why? Because you're the one who transitioned, not the trust. The trust is designed to live for the next 100 years. The trust is designed to outlive you, right? And so that's exactly what you want. So now what's going to happen is your successor trustee, the person who's going to take over after you, that person is going to take over that day. And they're going to continue to operate that trust, right? And remember, the trust has funds, which is $250,000 in cash. The trust has an asset, which is real estate. That asset is now generating income, and your children are going to receive their entire inheritance, because your children have been listed as the beneficiary of your trust estate. And they don't have to go into probate at all, because the trust didn't die. The trust is a living, breathing entity, right? And so now your children get to grieve in peace, because you have to understand what is happening at that time. They just lost the most important person in their entire life. I know, I lost my mom. So you allow them to grieve in peace. And one of the beautiful things that you're probably not aware of is that that debt that you had, meaning the medical bills, the student loans, the credit cards, that debt dies with you, because those creditors cannot come after your trust estate. Those creditors cannot come after your children. Those creditors can only come after you, and you no longer exist, and the assets that were in your personal name tied to your Social Security. So those companies, because they have nothing to go after, they have to discharge that debt, which is exactly what you want. Because at the end of the day, you want your children to receive everything, 100%. But they're only going to receive everything if you decide to get your affairs in order, if you decide to set up your trust estate, if you decide to start that foundation, to start that legacy, and to protect your assets. So let's dive right back into the slides. Give me a moment here. So let's talk about the wealth building formula, because that's actually what you came here for, right? So when it comes to the wealth building formula, I have 3 pillars. I have structure, credit, and invest. We've been talking about structure, right? So when it comes to structure, what I want you to know is that you have to have a trust within your structure. You have to. If you don't have a trust within your structure, you need to get a trust, okay? Now, the next thing I want you to know is that you should have a for-profit and a nonprofit within your structure. So let's just break it down. So now there's various different types of trust. I just want to give you 3 different types of trust, right? So the first one is a business trust. So this is for our entrepreneurs and our business owners, right? So with this type of trust, you can operate it 2 different ways. You can operate it like a business. So let's just say that you don't have an LLC. Instead of you going to the Secretary of State, instead of you, giving them, all of this information and stuff like that, what you can do is you can set up a business trust, and then you can operate your business that way, right? And so this is going to be a fully functional business, right? You're just operating it as a trust versus as an LLC or a corporation or a nonprofit, okay? So that's the first way. Now, the second way is you can operate it where it's non-operational, and it's going to be operating as a holding company, which means that it doesn't have any products or services, and it doesn't have any employees. So what's happening is that type of structure is going to act as a holding company, and it's going to hold other legal structures. These other legal structures are LLCs and corporations. So remember when I gave you that example earlier where we were saying that you don't want to own your LLC directly. So what you actually want is to establish a business trust that's acting as a holding company and that is non-operational, because that business trust needs to be the owner of that LLC. Because now what's going to happen is when with this type of entity, right, all of those assets are LLCs, corporations, or anything dealing with business, right? So if you have intellectual property, if you have inventory, if you have vehicles or anything like that, right, that are for commercial use or business use, okay? So let's just say that it's holding an LLC, and this LLC just generated $100,000, right? Well, because it generated $100,000, what it can do is it can do a K-1 distribution and move all that money into the business trust. And now with the business trust, a trust is taxed anywhere between 10% upwards of 37%. So the unique thing about the trust is that you get to spend the money first, and then you're taxed on the leftovers. So that's exactly what we want to do. We want to spend the money first. So what we're going to do is we're going to write off all the operating expenses. So whatever it costs in order for us to operate that business. So let's just say it costs about $30,000. So out of the $100,000, we just wrote off $30,000 in operating expenses. We have $70,000 that's left. So what are we going to do with the $70,000? Because now we have to pay taxes on the $70,000, right? So one of the most unique things about a trust is that it can actually issue out a distribution to the beneficiary, which means that if it issues out the distribution, then the beneficiary is going to pay for those taxes instead of the trust. So that's exactly what we're going to do on the business trust. So what happens is we are going to make the private family trust the beneficiary of the business trust, because that $70,000 needs to be distributed to the family. Why? Because we're business owners and entrepreneurs. We make our money through the business to provide for the family. So that $70,000 needs to go straight to the family trust. So now that we've distributed the $70,000 to the beneficiary, which is the family trust, at the business trust level, we're done paying taxes because $30,000 went to operating expenses and $70,000 went to distribution, which means that there's $0 left, which is a 0% tax liability. Okay, so we're done. So now let's move on to the next trust, which is the private family trust. So with the private family trust, what happens here is that this is everything dealing with your personal affairs, meaning all of the assets that are going to be held in this trust are going to be your personal assets, like your primary residence, your vehicle, your insurance policies, any crypto, any stocks, if you have any jewelry, any expensive handbags, if you have art pieces, if you have heirlooms, things like that, right? So all of those things are going to go right here into the family trust. And then your children are going to be the beneficiaries, right? So what does it cost in order to run the family trust? Well, remember, you have mortgage, you have taxes, you have groceries, you have an insurance bill, you have car note, gas, things like that, right? So whatever all of those operating expenses are, those management fees, those maintenance fees, things like that, whatever it costs, right? So remember, we're going to spend the money first, and then we're going to be taxed on the leftovers, which means that let's just say that it costs us 60,000, right? So if it costs us 60,000, then what's going to happen is whatever is left over. So so out of the 70 that came in, we are gonna write off 60,000 in operating expenses, and now there's 10,000 left over. So from that 10,000, we're gonna clearly have to pay taxes, right? So we have to pay 10% off of the 10,000, which is 1,000, or we can do something else that's very unique. We can do what you call a charitable contribution, which means that you can donate that $10,000 to a charity of your choice. Now, we, within our structure, are going to design a nonprofit. So we can operate it like a charity, we can operate it like a ministry, we can operate it however we want, but that nonprofit is going to receive that donation. So that $10,000 is going to go straight to the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. And then at the family trust level, remember, 70 came in, 60,000 went to operating expenses, which was a tax write-off. 10,000 went towards a charitable contribution, which is a donation. So we have $0 left, which means that we have a 0% tax liability. We're done. So now let's move on to the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. So with this trust, this is designated as a 508c1a, which means that it is a mandatory exception for having to file for a 501c3, which means that you automatically are exempt from paying federal income taxes to the IRS. You can also qualify to be exempt from other forms of taxes, like state taxes, city taxes, county taxes, property taxes, sales taxes. So that's a beautiful thing. Now with this type of entity, as I mentioned, you can operate it for charitable purposes, for religious purposes, or for educational purposes. So you can run it like a school, you can run it like a church, however you want, okay? So this is the type of trust that I was explaining earlier when I said it could help you reduce your tax liability, especially if you're a W-2 employee, because the IRS will allow you to do a charitable contribution of up to 60% of your annual gross income. So if you're making $100,000 on your W-2, you can donate 60 of it to this trust, and then you'll only be taxed on 40. So let's move on to the second pillar, which is credit, which is OPM. OPM is other people's money, specifically the bank's money. And so what you want to do is you want to leverage a second credit profile. So a lot of us, we depend on our personal credit, which is not the way to go. You need to create a second credit profile where you are able to leverage business credit. So what I want you to know is that a business trust can actually establish business credit off of the EIN. And that's going to be the same credit that you would have for an LLC or a corporation because they go off of the EIN, okay? Versus your personal credit goes off of your Social Security. So now that you know that you're able to establish this type of credit, just know that you can qualify for higher lines of credit, right? Meaning that on the personal level, let's just say Chase is only giving me 15,000, but on the business level, they gave me 150,000. That is a big difference. Because now you can leverage that OPM and you can put it somewhere else where it's actually growing, right? Which is what you want ultimately. So where would you put that, right? Well, I personally love these two assets. And these two assets are on the last column, which is an index universal life insurance policy and real estate, okay? So when it comes to the index universal life insurance policy, let's talk about it because a lot of people think that life insurance is supposed to be used when they're dead. But in all actuality, life insurance is supposed to be used when you are living. That's why it's called life insurance and not death insurance, okay? So let's talk about it. Now, when it comes to the life insurance, right, the first thing that I need you to know is that whatever money that you're putting into this type of policy is growing tax-free, okay? So this is a tax-free vehicle, which is the sweet spot, okay? Because that's where a lot of your money is being eaten up, okay? The second thing is that your money is protected. Meaning that if you're flowing money into your index universal life insurance policy, if your neighbor wants to sue you, right, they can surely sue you. But if you end up in court, the judge cannot tell you, oh, you have $1 million in your life insurance policy. You got to take that $1 million out. Nope, it can't do that, right? So that's a beautiful thing because every single penny is protected, which is what you want, right? We're trying to protect our assets here, okay? So your life insurance policy is automatically protected. Now, the next component is that it comes with a death benefit. So the death benefit is the form of insurance that you typically think about because you are what we call the insured. And so that means that your life is insured. And if anything happens to your life to where you transition, then there's a certain amount, right, that is going to be automatically given to your family. Okay, so that's a death benefit. So let's just say it's $1 million, right? So that $1 million death benefit that you had for this life insurance policy goes straight to your family. Okay, so that's a beautiful thing. Now let's talk about the living benefits, right? So now remember your death benefit is $1 million. Let's just say that something happens to you, right, while you're living, right? So what does that mean? Well, let's just say that you have a heart attack, right? And you survived the heart attack and your heart healed up fine, but you know, you can't go back to work. Work is just too stressful. That's where the heart attack happened, right? Well, you don't have to go back to work because one of the living benefits is dealing with critical illnesses and chronic illnesses. So if that happens to you during your lifetime, then you can access up to 90% of that death benefit, which means that that life insurance carrier is going to give you $900,000 cash while you're still living, just because you had a heart attack. So just think about that, right? Because a lot of things are happening medically that causes us to not be able to work, right? It could be surgeries, it could be cancer, it could be anything. So just know that you're also protected in that way because your income is protected, right? So now the next thing that I want to tell you is my favorite thing of all times, which is this type of policy. It actually accumulates what we call cash value. So it's cash value accumulation. So meaning that there's a separate account within this policy where you're going to be accumulating cash. And when we say cash, I mean liquid cash, like you can tap into it at any point in time. So what do we mean by that, right? So so remember, you have premiums that you're paying every single month, right? Let's just say that your premium is $100, right? And the way that you structure your policy is so important because let's just say that you structured it properly to where more of the premium is going to your cash value versus your death benefit. Then that means that now, let's just say that we structured it at like an 80-20 split. So 20% or $20 is going to the cost of insurance. And then 80% or $80 is going to your cash value. So now every single time that you make that $100 payment every single month, $80 is going to your cash value. So you have $80, $80, $80, $80 that is now accumulating each and every month, right? So that's amazing because one, that is money that you are able to have access to. But I'm not done yet. Now, what makes this policy so unique, look at the name, Index Universal Life. The word index is referring to an indice. The indice is a part of the stock market. So in the stock market, you have many different indices. You have the Dow Jones, you have the NASDAQ, you have the S&P 500, right? So let's just say that we are choosing the S&P 500, right? Let's just say that the S&P 500 is doing 12%. What is going to happen is the life insurance company, that carrier, is going to match what the S&P 500 is doing. So if they're doing 12%, they're going to match that and give you 12% on your cash value. So not only are you accumulating $80, $80, $80, $80, but now you're earning compound interest. So now they're giving you an extra 12% off of what you have accumulated inside of there. So now your money is working for you. Now you've parked your money in a place where every single dollar is going back out and bringing back a friend. Every dollar is going back out and bringing back 12 cents, which is exactly what you want, right? Because now that puts you in a position to where you don't have to work for money, money works for you, right? And so when it comes to this cash value, right, it's the cash accumulation plus the compound interest with this policy, which is beautiful. And the way that it ties into the trust is that the trust is going to be the owner of your life insurance policy. The trust is going to pay those $100 premiums. Excuse me. And the trust is going to be the beneficiary of your life insurance policy. You are going to be the insured. So if anything happens to you, then guess what? That death benefit of $1 million goes straight to your trust fund. Okay? So that is the position that you want to put yourself in, right? Where you are able to leverage this type of asset, right? And now what I will tell you is that, remember, we're talking about OPM, other people's money, the bank's money. A lot of people think that the bank is getting rich off of the mortgages and student loans that they're giving out. But in all actuality, the bank's number one asset is life insurance policies. I need you to Google this. Google BOLI, bank-owned life insurance, and you're going to see that these banks, Chase, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America, their number one asset is life insurance policies. So let me ask you a question. If the bank's number one asset is life insurance policies, and you need to be doing what the bank is doing, then what do you think your number one asset should be? Come off mute, let me know.
Life insurance, same thing.
All right. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate you. Life insurance, same thing. That's where you need to be holding most of your money because it's protected. Now, let me ask you a question. Is your money protected inside of the bank?
Not at all.
Exactly. They could seize it at any point in time. They could freeze it at any point in time. And let's just be honest, right? We live in a fractional reserve system, which means that your money is not really in there. Do you know that the banks with their regulatory bodies, they're not required to have all that money in there? That's what fractional reserve is. That means that there's only a fraction of it in there. So you're looking at $1,000 when they only really have $100 in there, right? Because the other 900 is floating somewhere else, working for them, right? And then let me ask you this. How much is the bank giving you? Because at the end of the day, let's just be honest. What has transpired here? Let's just say we just got paid today. It's Friday, right? And so our money goes straight to the bank, right? It goes straight to Wells Fargo. And the first thing that happens is we need to understand that we're actually loaning Wells Fargo money, right? Because we're putting our we're putting our money straight in there. And Wells Fargo is then pimping it out. Wells Fargo is lending it out, right? For the mortgages and the student loans and the car loans, and they're getting high interest. But how much are they giving us back for that loan? Come off mute, let me know. I don't want to feel like I'm alone up here.
0.01%.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Now what? Now, that sounds so disrespectful. What? 0.01%? That means almost nothing, right? But if you put your money into a life insurance policy, the carrier's like, okay, you know what? We're going to give you 12%. Now the beautiful thing that I like about the index universal life insurance policy is that your money is not directly invested into the stock market. You know the stock market is volatile, right? It goes up and down like a roller coaster. We don't have time for that. We do not have time to take any losses. And so once again, I'm not going to say it again, but I'm going to say it again. Inside of your life insurance policy, your money is protected, which means that you will never experience a loss. Why? Because one is that they have a floor and a ceiling. Okay, so that means that your money is not going to be directly invested into the stock market. It's going to be mirroring the market. If the market is up, then you're going to get the maximum, which depending on the carrier, let's just say it's 12%. So if the S&P 500 does 20%, your maximum, your ceiling is 12. You're going to get 12. That other 8 goes to the carrier. But let's just say that the S&P 500 is down 20%. Well, you're not going down with it because your floor is, let's just say 0.25. So meaning that in a down market, you're at least going to get 0.25, right? So that's the beautiful thing about it. And you want to put your money in places where it's protected, okay? So now let's talk about real estate because that's my favorite thing on earth. Real estate is what has set me free, okay? And the reason being is because remember in the beginning of the call, I told you guys that I was a registered nurse, right? Now, how you think I got out of nursing? Well, I got out of nursing by way of real estate, right? Because once it was that first property that actually set me free. Right? That first property, remember, I bought it for $89,000. I sold it for $235,000. I made 6 figures off of one beat up house that I turned it so beautiful and I sold it for $235,000. Now, once I realized I could make 6 figures off of one house, I was like, this is my way out, right? So now, let me tell you a quick little story of how I decided, that I was going to retire young, right? Because I have the liberty of retiring at 31 years old, right? And that's because I was intentional about wanting financial freedom, location freedom, and time freedom. Because a lot of us, we put ourselves in these positions where we have just bought into the system, right? And so the system has nurtured us in a certain kind of way. Or what I like to call institutionalized us, right? So how have we been institutionalized? Well, remember, from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, what did they teach us? You got to show up in a concrete box for 5 days a week for 8 hours a day, and then you get your weekends off, right? And so we did that all through elementary, middle school, high school, right? Then we go to college, same thing. Show up at the concrete box, sit down, relax. You're gonna be here all day, right? And then we get into our job or our career. And then what are we doing? So once again, we're giving away 40 hours for the week, right? We're showing up Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day, right? Weekends off. And then what happens? We're going to do that for 40 years. And then they tell us retire when you're 65. Once you're 65, then guess what happens? You have time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom, right? That's what they say. Or they say, hey, depend on us, depend on Social Security, right? But they want you to start living your life at 65 years old, which is unheard of because sometimes like our health is deteriorated. Like you don't even know what condition you're going to be at 65 years old, right? And so that's the vicious cycle that we are in, right? That's literally a vicious cycle, right? That's the hamster wheel, right? Where we're doing the same thing, rinse and repeat every single day, right? And so because we bought into that lie, right? You want to take yourself out of that system. And I'm here to tell you that you can put yourself in a position to where you can retire young, right? When you can have that financial freedom now, right? As long as you park your money in the right places, because a lot of us think that we have to work for money. And I'm here to tell you, you do not have to work for money. Money has to work for you. You just have to put the money in the right place, right? So when I was in my 20s, I would say maybe like 24, I decided that I was going to retire young, right? I was like, I'm not doing this for long, right? And so the reason that that happened to me is because one day I was at work and I was working with one of my coworkers. Her name is Audrey, and Audrey is 65 years old. Now at work, and I'm 24. So Audrey is 65 years old and she is exhausted and she's not doing well right now, right? So I am ripping and running through these hospital hallways, taking care of her patients and my patients, right? And so I stopped and I asked her, I said, Miss Audrey, when are you going to retire? Like you have been a nurse for 40 years. And I promise you, I swear, at that time, on that day, she was a nurse for 40 years. So I said, you have been a nurse for 40 years. You're 65 years old. When are you going to retire? And she looks at me and she's like, Christina, I'm not ready to retire. And I'm like, why not? I'm young, right? I'm oblivious. I don't get it. I'm like, I thought you made it. Like, you 65. Like, why not? And she's like, because if I wait until I'm 67 and a half, then Social Security will give me an extra $300. And I didn't understand it. I was like, what? I was like, Miss Audrey, you mean to tell me that you're going to work for an extra 2.5 years for $300? And she's like, yes. And I said, okay. And it was that interaction that I decided that I wasn't going to be Miss Audrey, that I wasn't going to work in my nursing career for 40 years, that I wasn't going to wait until I'm 65 to retire, that I was not going to depend on Social Security at all, at all. And I told myself, I said, I'm going to retire myself. I'm going to give myself 10 years and I'm out. Unfortunately, that night, Miss Audrey, she was leaving the parking lot at the hospital and as she was coming out of the parking lot, she hit the tree right in front of the emergency room. And she died on impact. And she never made it home. She never made it to retirement. She never made it to 67 and a half. She never collected a Social Security check. So do not wait. Don't wait to get your affairs in order. Don't wait to retire. Don't depend on the government. You have to only depend on yourself. And that's what I decided to do. And that's why I was able to retire myself in 8 years. I didn't even wait the full 10. I retired myself at 31 years old through real estate. So I'm here to tell you guys the strategy, right? When it comes to real estate. So what I need you to know is what I just told you. OPM, other people's money, the bank's money. Use other people's money. You see, I made 6 figures off of one house and I didn't put $1 in there. Not $1. I was broke. I was getting payday loans because I was in survival mode. I had a 1-year-old baby. I was 24, 25. Like I couldn't. So when it comes to real estate, a trust can own real estate. A trust can get a mortgage. A trust can get a home equity line of credit. What you want to do is you want to get what we call a DSCR, which stands for Debt Service Coverage Ratio loan. This is a loan specifically for an entity, so this is not something you get in your name. And it's specifically for a property that's going to be non-owner occupied. So it's for investment properties only. So you have to invest, okay? Before I even bought my own primary residence, I bought investment property first, okay? So now when it comes to the DSCR, right, they will lend you up to 80% of the purchase price. So if they lending you 80%, then that means that you got to get the other 20% somewhere else. So if you're getting the other 20%, I would tell you, remember, we had spoke about establishing business credit for the business trust, right? You want to be able to build up that business credit so that you can qualify for a credit card. Let's just say that you qualify for a credit card for $50,000, right? So now you want to go ahead and buy, let's just say you're going to buy a triplex. You're going to buy a triplex and you're getting the DSCR loan for the 80% and you're coming up with the 20%. So now you got this credit card with $50,000, you're going to liquidate the credit card. When you liquidate the credit card, the money is going to go into your bank account. The first thing that you're going to do with the money is, instead of you going to the closing table, you are going to put that money into your index universal life insurance policy. That policy is designed to be overfunded, meaning that you can flow in a lot of money into that policy up to a certain amount, depending on how you structure it. So that's why I'm telling you, you got to structure it the right way. So you're going to flow that $50,000 right into that policy. Now, remember what I told you before? That policy is liquid, okay? So that means that you have cash in there that has accumulated, right? Which is the 50,000. And so now you're going to contact the carrier and you're going to tell the carrier, hey, I need a loan. And so now the carrier is going to look at your cash value and they're going to be like, okay, yeah, you have money in there, right? How much do you want? And you're going to say the max. And so they're not going to let you liquidate 100%. So let's just say they say, okay, well, you can take out 49,000. Okay. So now they issue you a policy loan for $49,000. So now they do a direct deposit straight into your bank account for $49,000. So now you're going to go to the closing table and you're going to purchase that real estate. So I just want to show you something, right? You just used $50,000 and you parked it in two places. You parked it into the Index Universal Life Insurance policy, and because it is in the cash value, it's going to be earning compound interest. Let's just say it's earning 11%. So now that $50,000 is going to be earning 11%, right? Or whatever the market is doing, okay? Which is beautiful. So now it's working for you the first time. That's his first job, right? Now you borrowed it back out and now you're going to park it in the second location. So the second location is a down payment on real estate. So now you went to the closing table, you put that $49,000, you bought that triplex zero down, meaning you use none of your own money. Do you know how many properties I have purchased this way? You use none of your own money. You got 100% financing. You closed on the property, right? And so now your trust has an asset, right? An income producing asset. That's key, right? So this needs to be not only an asset that's appreciating, but is producing income, is bringing in some money into the trust organization, because you want the trust to be able to sustain itself. You don't want to put yourself in a position to where you are pouring in your W-2 income into the trust. That's not what we're doing. That's not what we do. We are not setting up a trust so that we can pour money into the trust. We're setting up a trust so that the trust can retire us, right? And so now what's going to happen, what you need to understand is that once again, that money is working for you two ways, right? So it's working inside of the cash value in your IUL, is working inside of the real estate. Let's just say it's the first of the month, right? Well, no, let's not just say it's the first of the month. It actually is the first of the month, right? So today is July 1st, and it is time to collect rent, okay? So you have 3 units, right? You got a triplex, $2,000 each. That's $6,000 in rental income. So let me ask you this question. Where's the rental income gonna go? What's the first place you're gonna put it? Where is it?
The life insurance.
Oh my God, who said that?
Kelly and Jeremiah.
Okay, let's go, Kelly and Jeremiah. Yes, exactly. I love it. So yes, that is the first place where it's going to go. It's going to go straight into your IUL policy. Okay, so now you got $6,000 that's flowing in there, right? Your cash value is going to go up. You're going to take out a policy loan, right? To cover what? The mortgage, the credit card, and then whatever's left over, you let it sit inside of the trust fund account. Why? Maintenance, management fees, whatever it is, right? And so now you're going to do rinse and repeat. So now you acquire the first asset, you continue, you acquire the second property, the third property, the fourth property, right? You rinse and repeat this method so that the trust is now building wealth and the trust can retire you, right? Because your position inside of the trust organization is what? Last time last time that I knew, you wanted full control. So you're the trustee of the trust. That is how you're going to be able to retire yourself. But first, it's going to take you having a mindset shift. And that mindset shift means that you have to put yourself in a position to where you're paying yourself first instead of paying yourself last. So when that $6,000 comes in for the rental income, instead of you paying the mortgage first, instead of you paying the credit cards first, instead of you paying the utility companies like the light and the gas and the water, you're going to pay yourself first by putting that $6,000 into your IUL and putting it to work, because it needs to triple and quadruple, right? And so that is how you are going to be able to build wealth efficiently. That is how you're going to be able to build wealth effectively, right? So this is what I call the wealth building formula. So let's continue on. All right, so now what I want you to know and understand is that you want to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. That is so vitally important, because a lot of us, we are operating in ownership. So we just believed in all of what society wants us to believe in, okay? It's called programming, all right? And so what the programming is that society wants you to be the proud owner of everything. I want you to be the proud owner of your house. I want you to be the proud owner of your car. I want you to be the proud owner of whatever it is, right? And so out here in society, what are we doing? We are using our name and social security for everything, right? Whatever it is that you want to do. You want to go to school, name and social, please. You want to work, name and social, please. You want to buy a house, name and social, please. Right? So that is how we're programmed to put our name and our social security on everything, to have everything personally owned by us, right? Why? Because the government wants to be able to track you, right? Because the government wants to know, where has she worked? Where has she gone to school? What assets have she purchased, right? If you're not using your social security, they don't know, right? You want to open up a bank account, name and social, please. Now we're able to see how much money are you flowing inside of there, right? So that is how we're programmed. That is how society is designed and structured for us. So what I want you to know is that we need to get out of that operating within ownership, and we need to move more towards stewardship, because stewardship is where you don't have your name and your social on everything, where you have full control over everything, where you're a good steward over the assets that are in your control, right? Because when it comes to, let's just say, your primary residence, right? When it comes to your primary residence, right? If you don't wake up tomorrow, this is my question for you, so come off mute. If you don't wake up tomorrow, is the house still going to be there?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of us, we think that we desire ownership, but in actuality, what we truly desire is control. We want control over the house while we're living, right? The house is still going to be there. So it's not ownership that you really desired. It's control. I want to be able to control this asset for the 50 years that I'm here on earth, right? And so that is what you can get with stewardship. So you need to be a good steward of your asset by owning nothing but controlling everything. You got control over the bank account. You have control over the money. You have control over the house. You have control over the car. You have control over the jewelry. You have control over everything. Your life insurance policies, you have control. So now, how do you actually transfer the wealth, right? Because a lot of us, we're just focused on making the money. And then we're out here lying and saying, I'm building generational wealth. No, you're not. Just because you made $200,000 doesn't mean that you're building generational wealth. Okay? There is a strategic way to build generational wealth. So please do not lie. Because if you don't have the tools to build generational wealth, you're not building generational wealth. Okay? Just because you bought a house doesn't mean you're building generational wealth. Okay? So how do you actually transfer the wealth, right? Well, the wealth is going to be transferred by way of TCUs, which stands for Trust Certificate Units. So just like how a corporation has stock certificates, well, a trust has trust certificates, okay? So stock certificates represents ownership in a corporation. Well, TCUs represents what we call beneficial interest in a trust. Because remember what we said at the beginning of the call, a trust is a living entity. And no one owns a living entity, right? No one owns you, you're a living entity. No one owns your son and your daughter, right? They're living entities. You control them right now, right? But you don't own them, right? So the same thing with a trust. They have beneficial interests, okay? So now the trust, when it's established, is going to create 100 trust certificate units that are going to be dispersed to the beneficiaries. So let's just say that you have 4 children, you disperse 25 units to each child, right? So now one of your beneficiaries has 25 units. Let's just say that your trust is worth $1 million net worth. Well, that one child that has that 25 units means that they have 25% of beneficial interest. So if that trust was to be terminated today, right? And the $1 million is to be dispersed, then that child would be entitled to $250,000 because that's what their units are equivalent to. Okay. So that's how you're going to transfer generational wealth, because now remember your children, they have 25 units each, right? But then they grow up and then they have children, right? And so their 25 units go to their children, right? Then those 25 units go to their children. And so we're going to be passing on the trust certificate units between generation to generation. That is how money is actually going to be transferred and reach the second generation and the third generation and the fourth generation. All right. So you need to be transferring wealth this way, intergenerationally. Okay. So now let me ask you a question, because I see this all the time, and I know that you guys seen it. I have conversations with you guys all the time. So how many times have we seen it to where athletes, celebrities, actors, singers, famous families, right? To where they either blow their wealth in their lifetime, right? Or the wealth doesn't reach the second or third generation. We've been even seen them in probate, right? You've seen it all over CNN, right? Where the family is fighting left and right for the inheritance, right? So why do you think that happens? That happens because they didn't have the tools. They didn't have the trust. They didn't have the life insurance policies, right? So in order for you to preserve your wealth, in order for you to conserve your wealth, you need two tools, right? So if you're intentional about generational wealth, you need a trust and you need life insurance policies, okay? Because what's going to happen is it's so vitally important that the trust ensures all of its assets. So the trust has, let's say, a car. It has car insurance. The trust has a house. It has homeowners insurance, right? The trust has cash. It has FDIC. So the trust also has what we call human assets. Those human assets are you and your beneficiaries. So the trustees and the beneficiaries. So what's going to happen is the trust is going to ensure the trustees, the co-trustees, the beneficiaries, and the future beneficiaries. So these future beneficiaries are the babies that are going to be born into the trust organization. So these babies are what we call the trust fund babies. So now when you hear out here in society, when you hear trust fund baby, I don't know why it has a negative connotation to it, because it should actually have a positive connotation to it, because it is a good thing to be born into a trust organization. It is a good thing to be a trust fund baby. You just have to have those spendthrift provisions in place that we spoke about earlier. So now when we're talking about preservation of wealth, what's going to happen is the trust is going to take out a policy on all of them. So when that trust fund baby is born into the trust organization, the trust is going to take out a life insurance policy on that baby when that baby is at least 15 days old. Because now what's going to happen is that baby, we're going to put that baby on an IUL. And we're going to be paying $100 a month, right? So remember, the trust is the payer of the premiums. The trust is going to be paying $100 a month, $100 a month, $100 a month. But guess what? One day, this trust fund baby is going to grow up. Let's just say that this trust fund baby is now 18 years old. What happens when you're 18 years old? Well, you're off to college. But this trust fund baby is like, hey, I need a set of Hot Wheels. Like, I have to be driving on campus. And so they're asking for a car. Clearly, that trust fund baby can go to the dealership and go buy a $30,000 car and get into $1,000 payments, monthly payments. Or because they're a trust fund baby, they can come to the trust organization and they can request a loan because they're the beneficiary of that trust. And so they're going to ask the trustee, hey, can I get a loan? I want to go ahead and buy my car. And so the trustee is going to sign a check over for $30,000 and hand it to the trust fund baby, right? Because it's a part of the stipulations, right? For the spendthrift provisions. Okay, wonderful. You can get a car, right? It's associated with your education. Okay, wonderful. So now that trust fund baby goes out and purchases that car cash. Okay, but we want that trust fund baby to be responsible. So the guidelines and the terms and conditions that we set forth for that $30,000 loan is that that trust fund baby is now going to pay the trust $300 a month, right? And so now the trust fund baby's paying $300, $300, $300, right? It's going straight into the trust, earning compound interest, right? But now, guess what happens? The trust fund baby decides, well, I don't want to pay the trust anymore, and stops paying. So now the trust fund baby has defaulted on that loan. Well, it is absolutely okay that the trust fund baby has defaulted because the money did not originate from the trust. The money originated from the life insurance policy because that baby has an IUL policy. So what transpired is the trustee, as soon as that trust fund baby requested a loan, the trustee contacted the life insurance carrier and did a policy loan for that baby's policy. And the carrier issued out the $30,000 direct deposit into the trust fund. And that is how the $30,000 check was issued from the trust to the trust fund baby. So loans do not have to be paid back. Okay, so the policy loans do not have to be paid back. They're automatically deducted from the death benefit. Now, this trust fund baby has been compounding and cash accumulating since 15 days old, right? So that death benefit is $5 million, right? So that $30,000 is only going to be deducted, right, from that $5 million. And when that trust fund baby transitions in the next, 40 something years, then what happens is that $5 million minus the 30,000 is direct deposited into the trust. Because you have to understand that the trust has to insure its human assets. Because if it doesn't, then you have to understand that if there's a loss, the trust is devastated. So the trust needs to be compensated for that loss, right? And so that is how you're going to be able to preserve the wealth, because people are coming in and out of the trust organization. People are being born and people are transitioning. So you have to insure everyone in order to preserve the wealth so that the wealth can last the third generation, fourth generation, fifth generation, sixth generation. This is how you build generational wealth that actually lasts, right? Not the way that you're doing it. Not just by you buying a piece of property or two pieces of property or three pieces. No. It's by you having a trust and by you having life insurance on the people associated with the trust. It's the whole entire organization. That's how you need to run it. So these are the books that I recommend. I recommend What Would the Rockefellers Do, which teaches you about the marriage between trust and life insurance. Okay, it's a perfect marriage. The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2, teaches you about trusteeship, right? How to actually operate, right? The Family Wealth teaches you how to run your business, how to run your family like a business. All of us should be doing that, right? You are the CEO of your family. She is the CFO of the family, right? Your children are little secretaries, right? They do what you tell them to do anyways. And the Complete Book of Trust, which teaches you about the different types of trust.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while, and there are a number of people offering trust these days. Don't own anything, control everything. That is the sentiment. It seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions, things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you. This has been an overall great experience. I definitely will recommend you to others.
So let's work together. I do have a program teaching you step by step how to establish these types of trust. So I spoke about three different types of trust that you want within your structure. So if you are a business owner, you definitely want a business trust. If you are, having a family, or if you have anything personal going on, like your personal assets, you need that private family trust. And then you also want to have a nonprofit within your structure. So the program doesn't only come with one trust, it comes with three trusts. So you have two options. You can either do it yourself or you can do it with us. Okay. So your first option, do it yourself, is where you'll get access to our course. So it's an on-demand course that has 43 video modules. And what happens is you are going to be watching the video trainings. You're going to download the trust template and you're going to step by step learn how to establish your own trust. Okay. You have lifetime access to the course, and then you have all the resources and ebooks. So I just gave you a list of books that I recommend. All of those books are available electronically. Some of those books price tags $800 and more. And as far as the resources, we give you every single resource that you're going to need in order to efficiently operate your trust, meaning that you need to have board meetings for your trust. We give you the templates, right? You need to file taxes for the trust. We show you step by step, right? You need to transfer your house or your car. We help you with that, right? You need to open up a bank account, right? We show you how to do that. So we have all of the resources that you're going to need to operate a trust, okay? We also have a community. So our community is 2,500 trustees strong, and these individuals have been operating within trusteeship for years. Okay, so these are like-minded individuals that you have full access to, that are in your city, they're in your state. Okay, trust me. So we have a private Facebook community, and then we also have a Telegram chat where we are on Telegram every single day chatting with each other. Okay, so with that, like I said, you get lifetime access to the course. And in order to enroll in the course, the price is only $997. Now, your second option is Done With You. Done With You is where we do it together on Zoom Live. Okay, so the way that it happens is we set up a workshop for you. Oh, the workshop is 1 week long. It's Monday through Friday. Okay, so the workshop is actually going to start in a couple of days. So it's going to start this Monday coming up. Okay, so what day is that? That is, let's see, the 6th. So the 6th to the 10th. Okay, so our workshop is coming up in just a couple of days, but you have some homework before the workshop. So with the workshop, this is the way it works, right? So we're going to meet Monday through Friday from 11 in the morning to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Monday, we are going to be going over the business trust. Okay, so I'm going to break down every single paragraph of the trust so you can understand the contents of the trust, because what I found in this industry is that a lot of people, they'll set up a trust and they'll be too afraid to use it. They don't know how to use it, or they'll just do everything all wrong, right? So we want to show you the right way of doing it, because we want you to build up that confidence to know, yes, I am very empowered and I know that I can operate as a trustee, right? It's the same thing like operating a business, right? Nobody is teaching you how to operate the business. You just going out and winging it, and we don't believe in that. So we want to show you the right way of operating. So now on Monday, after we break down every single paragraph, we open up the floor for Q&A so that I can answer any and all questions that you have. Tuesday, we focus on the family trust. So we break down every single paragraph. You learn how to set up this trust organization, and then we dive into Q&A. On Wednesday, we teach you about the nonprofit tax exempt trust. And then from there, we go through how to obtain your tax exempt EIN number with the IRS and how to be ordained. So with that type of trust, we open up the floor for Q&A. And being in this type of environment is completely different, because you have to understand that you are being in an environment where there's like-minded individuals. They're asking really good questions that you did not know that you wanted to know. And so you actually end up learning more. But we actually hold you accountable, right? So just doing it live is on another level. So let's talk about Thursday. So on Thursday, we focus on OPM, other people's money, specifically the bank's money. So what I do is I teach you how to get those EINs for the IRS. so that you're able to open up your bank accounts, because you can't open up a bank account without an EIN. And what's going to happen is I give you a list of the banks. And then from there, I go over banking procedures and operations. I show you how to have a board meeting for the bank and how to document how much you're going to fund the trust with. And then our funding manager comes. So when our funding manager comes, he's going to teach you how to establish business credit and business funding so that you can get the OPM, you can get the money that you need in order to invest in these assets for the trust, right? So you want to be able to fund the trust properly. And so our educator will show you how to do that. And then we open up the floor for Q&A so we can answer any and all questions that you might have. And then the very last day of the workshop is Friday. On Friday, we focus on asset protection as well as trust taxes, okay? So when it comes to asset protection, the first thing that we have you do is take an inventory of your assets so that you know which assets are going to qualify to go inside of the trust and which assets don't. And then from there, we show you step by step how to transfer your house into the trust by way of a quitclaim deed, how to transfer your car into the trust by the way of a bill of sale, how to transfer your businesses, corporations, LLCs into the trust by way of a business purchase agreement and amendments. And then our CPA comes. So our CPA comes and he teaches you how to file taxes for the trust, answers all of your tax questions, and we open up the floor for Q&A. So that is the workshop. It's very robust. It's very thorough, and it's straight to the point. It teaches you how to set up these 3 trusts, right? Efficiently, effectively. My team and I, we hold you accountable. We hold your hand through the whole process, and we have a lot of support. So the workshop is only $2,500, and you guys can go to wealthytrustee.com. So I want to show you one more
I just
thing.
want to say another thing too. So she's 100% because I've been to probate and it's not fun. It's not fun and it's very costly. So what she's charging is pennies. I mean, I actually paid $5,000 for probate. And it took a whole year and a half for us to sell our house. And my husband was the only son that she had. So the house, you would think it would automatically go to him, and it didn't. We still had to go to probate, spend $5,000, go to probate, and we had to pay the mortgage for a whole year and a half. So it was a mess, I'm telling you. And she's only asking, what, $2,500 for the program? It is just not expensive at all. Trust me. It is a lot of information, so you have to be ready. Listen to the tutorials that she gives you because you could be prepared because it's a lot of information, but she's very thorough. And I appreciate you so, so much. And then I found out my husband, we did this a while ago, about 10 years ago. We spent $7,000 for an attorney and it was trash. What she said about it, putting your name and all that stuff on it, the guy was trash. And
So all you have to do is go to wealthytrustee.com, you guys. You can also call us. You can send us an email. So for this week, we are actually running a promotion because it's 4th of July. So you can actually get 40% off using the discount code that's inside of the chat. Okay, so if you guys want to take advantage of the discount, it is going to expire this weekend during 4th of July. So if you're intentional about setting up your legacy, then you want to be able to take advantage of this promotion because we have never did a 40% promotion in this entire year. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to show you what a trust looks like. I want to show you what the program looks like. I want to open up the floor for Q&A. So let me see here. Okay, so this is what a trust template looks like. So everything that you see in red is what you would be customizing for your family. And like I mentioned, I break down every single paragraph so that you guys can understand the contents of the trust so that you can have the confidence to know that you're able to operate a trust. Now, this is the Wealthy Trustee program. So this is our course. So if you go with either option, you still get the course. And the way that you are going to go through this course is first, you're going to go and learn about what a trust entity is. Okay, that's that foundational education that you need. And so we teach you what a trust is, the different parties involved, meaning the grantor's, trustees, beneficiaries, successors, protectors, the different types of trust. Then you learn about the tax-exempt trust, how to set it up. You learn about the family trust, how to set it up. You learn about the business trust, how to set it up. Then we go into tax strategies so that some of the trusts you can operate tax-exempt. You learn about the for-profit and the nonprofits, about distributable net income, and how to avoid tax evasion, because that's not what we do here, okay? And then asset protection is where you're going to take an inventory of your assets, and then you're going to learn how to open up the bank accounts, the brokerage, how to transfer the house, the cars, the insurance policies, as well as your businesses, and how to have board meetings. Then we go into wealth creation, where you learn about business credit, OPM, how to invest in the stock market, how to do the infinite banking and be your own bank with the life insurance policies. We go into your legacy crest, and then you have your resources and your ebooks available. So I want to open up the floor for Q&A so I can answer any and all questions that you guys might have. I know that we went over a lot of information, and I did go over by a couple of minutes. So let me answer your question. So I see iPhone number 2 has a question, has her hand or his hand up.
Hi, yes, it's me, Francia. How are
Hi,
you?
hi, Francia. How are you?
I'm good. Yes, I missed the part. I got the part where you said to have the 50K flow into the IUL and then you contact the carrier and you get the policy loan. But I missed the previous part as far as like what we're applying for. So I just wanted to ask, what did you say before that?
Oh, so what I said is that we're purchasing real estate. So we're going to use that 50K as our 20% down.
I see. Okay. Got it. Appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Francia. All right. Next we have Jeremiah and Kelly.
Hi, thank you so much for taking our questions.
You're welcome.
I have two questions.
Yes.
The first is, when you were talking about not being associated with your trust, and like so nobody can kind of connect you to it for litigations or court costs or whatever. So what address, what phone number, like when we're setting up the trust, or even like getting our EIN and stuff, what address do we put on it other than our own?
That is a wonderful question. And so we do teach you that in the program. So you want to use a virtual address. That's a mail forwarding service. Okay. So we have a partnership with a company called iPostal One. They are a very reputable company. They will give you addresses all over the US and US territories. And so what you're going to do is you're going to sign up for an account. They're going to give you a virtual address, and that virtual address is going to be used for your trust, and your trust needs to have a separate address from you. Okay. You do not want to use your primary residence or any address that you're associated with. Okay. So you have brought up a very good point, and it's something that we thoroughly go over inside of the program. So don't worry, you're not going to be skipping any steps. The same thing goes for the phone number. So I'm glad that you're aware that when it goes to you opening up an EIN number with the IRS, you do have to provide that contact information. So you need the trust name, trust address, trust phone number. You even also need an email for the trust. And so you're going to be setting those things up. So now we have virtual phone numbers, right? Where we'll get a second line from like you can download an app, you can use a Google Voice, things like that. There's various different phone providers, but you are going to have the trust have its own phone number as well.
So my second question was, when you were talking about the example of having your $100,000 a year, and then you can put $60,000 in your trust, so you're only taxed on 40 with your W-2. So my husband and I own our own business. We get self-employment taxes, not W-2. So with the 508c1a, which is what we're most interested in, are you able to put your own income off of self-employment instead of like W-2 into the 508c1a trust?
Yeah, so it's whatever your annual gross income. So it doesn't necessarily have to be W-2. It could be 1099.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kelly. All right, next we have Shemaya.
Hey, Christina, thank you very much for your presentation. Question with regards.
Oh, thank you for being here this evening.
You're welcome. My question with regards to the business trust setting it up. Say if I already have an S corp and a C corp, But if I wanted to I have a media company, and I want to have I have my own TV series, but instead of having them as a limited liability partnership, can I just start out with a business trust and to forego the LLP? You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely. Yes, you can.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you very much. So,
You're
one
welcome.
last question. One last question. With regards to that, when we were talking about business credit and things of that nature, could the this unincorporated business trust, is it possible to file for like sam.gov for grants, or that's something different?
Yeah, it is different. So you can traditionally get like bank funding for it, but it's very
Uh-huh.
challenging to get like federal grants.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. All right, next we have KJ.
Hey, Peace, how you doing?
Great, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I appreciate all of this information here.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
without getting into too much detail with, um, doing your program here, for someone with trusts already established but haven't really done much with them, and kind of a tiered structure where the top is a faith-based, completely private, irrevocable trust. My ultimate question is that something that in your program you would maybe take some time to look over or give any direction on, or would you completely suggest, leaving that to the side and moving forward with the structure you're speaking on here?
So when you come into the program, you're going to learn the strategies that we use and what we implement for a faith-based organization. So you're going to learn the ins and outs of the operation. And you get to customize how you actually want to operate it. But if you are saying that you have it established, but you haven't really used it, we're going to teach you how to put it to use.
That's what I was asking. That's what I was looking for. And I guess just to piggyback on that a bit, if not much has been done with them, two of the three, one is a irrevocable private trust, kind of in the middle, and has owners beneficial interest over uh, a revocable living trust. Both of those two have EIN numbers. So I guess ultimately I would want to, absorb those or integrate those somehow into the structure that you've been presenting here. Is that something that sounds doable?
Yes, it definitely is. So a lot of our community members have come in with their own trust, and they don't know how to operate it. They don't know how to properly document their transactions. They don't know how to fund it. So they come in here and they learn more about the trusteeship so that they are able to navigate, and they do incorporate the existing trust that they have. So just have that mindset that you're going to need multiple trusts. So you don't have to terminate the trust that you already have. You can just incorporate it into your structure and get restructured.
That's excellent. I really appreciate you.
Yes, you're welcome, KJ. Thank you for being here. Next, we have iPhone. Hey, iPhone.
I guess that may be me.
Yes,
Okay.
it is
Yeah. Okay.
you.
So I have a two-part question. One of them is how much does it usually cost to set up a trust? And then I'll ask you the second question after that.
Oh, okay. The price varies. So for like one trust, like the price could vary between, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500, upwards of 50,000 to 100,000. So it just depends on the type of trust and the organization that you go to set it up. So I know somebody who spent 40,000 on a trust. I know somebody who spent 50,000 on one trust.
Okay. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you for that. And then the second question is, I have three children in college right now. And I was told before not to kind of purchase the properties. This is the reason why I want to set up the trust, because I want to purchase properties, but directly put them into the trust. But I don't want to. I noticed when I fill out my parental form, it states and it asks, are the children beneficiaries of a trust? So I don't know if that's going to affect, some of the money that they get towards college. So that's a question. Should I wait until after they finish? and or should I kind of like go ahead and set it up and begin to purchase the properties and then the trust?
Oh, okay. So I'm not sure like what the paperwork you're talking about. So whoever is providing that paperwork, I don't know if it's the school or student loans or financial aid or whatever, scholarships. So you're gonna have to contact them to ask them if it will or if it will not. Now, what I will tell you is that you're not required to disclose who the beneficiaries are. Okay, so that is not need to know information. And as long as your trust is not publicly registered, then no one is going to know that your children are the beneficiary. The only people who are going to know are the trustees of the trust.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I
Mhm.
appreciate
You're welcome.
you for being so thorough and professional. I've been to many kind of like workshops and conferences, but you hit everything on the nose, and I mean you're definitely very knowledgeable. So I want to thank you for that. Definitely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for saying that. I am just trying to help as many families as possible. I am 36 years old, and you just have no clue what I have witnessed. So, I have witnessed people losing assets. I've witnessed pretty much everything under the sun. So, I am here to help you protect what you work so hard for, and then also for the next generation, really. So, I'm doing it for you and your children, your whole family, because that's what you're doing it for. So,
Exactly.
yes, everyone that's on the call, you guys are generational curse breakers. So let me see, is there any other questions? If not, then we are going to wrap it up here. I've had you here all evening and I apologize. It was supposed to be 90 minutes, but I love to give you guys examples and I love to break it down as thorough as possible. And what I want you guys to know is that you are the generational curse breakers in your family. It takes individuals like you, right? Because that's what I was in my family. And I know that God only brings together, like-minded individuals. So I know that you guys are just like me. So you're the generational curse breaker in your family where you are stuck right here in the middle, where you have to help your parents get their affairs in order, but then you have your own children. You got to leave a legacy for your children. So you have to do it all. It takes that one person to make the sacrifice. It takes the one person to look fear in the face and say, I'm going to do it anyways. It takes the one person to say, I'm going to establish the legacy. It takes the one person to say, hey, we built this house on a soft foundation, and now we need to get everything restructured, get our affairs in order, and build from a solid foundation, right? And it takes that one person to say, hey, I'm going to leave wealth for the next generation. They're going to thank their great, great, great grandfather and their great, great, great grandmother. It takes that one person. And that one person is you. I know that without a shadow of a doubt. So I want to say congratulations. Congratulations to you guys just for being on the call and grabbing the information, right? But I want you to say that it's not only for you to have the information, but you have to apply the information, right? Because tomorrow is not promised. Like we just had, I just found out yesterday that one of our trustees transitioned 2 months ago, right? But guess what? His wife is protected, right? Because they transferred their property into a trust last year, right? And so they were just calling to let me know that the trustee transitioned. So you want to be able to protect your family because tomorrow is not promised. And the trust is designed to outlive you. And that's exactly what you want. So have that succession plan in place. And this is where you start. This is where you're going to create your legacy. This is where you are going to change the trajectory of your kids, your family. Because right now, at the end of the day, your children, they can't inherit your 9 to 5, right? And if you're a business owner, which we have business owners on the call, right? What happens if you're operating the business and then you transition? What's going to happen with the business? Right? A lot of families, they don't think that. And so you want to start raising your children to where, yeah, they're beneficiaries now, but they're going to take over. They're going to be your successor. They're going to go ahead and be trustees of the organization in the future. That's how you're going to change the trajectory of not only your life, but your children's life. So just take action on the information, So, yeah, so anyways, you can visit our website, wealthytrustee.com. We are, like I said, running a 4th of July promotion, so you get 40% off. So we have not done such a humongous discount this entire year. So I would take advantage because you won't see it again. So without further ado, oh, Miss Y has a question. Hey, Miss Y.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. So wonderful. Of course, I couldn't get the Zoom link up, so I missed so much. Can I go
Oh, I'm
back and
sorry.
rewatch? That's
Mhm.
okay. Can I rewatch it somewhere?
Yeah, I'm gonna put the replay link right now. So just give me a moment to grab that link. And for those of you guys that didn't get to watch the whole thing, you have the replay link. And for those of you that actually want another family member to get access to this information, just share the replay link with them so that you can pay it forward and they can actually get this information and see what they don't know, right? Because like I told you, I talk to hundreds of people every single week, and people are just uninformed. And I wish that that I can just, you know, climb to the top of this mountain and scream this out, but I can't. So I just want as many families to have exposure to this information as possible so that they can protect their assets.
I
So
have one. I have one
yeah,
last question. I
yes,
have one last
ma'am.
question. I know you have to go. Um, Can we contact you privately? Do you have knowledge? I know probably everybody's behind the 8 ball, but I lost parents and in the middle of trying to plan these type of things, but it was snatched away from me. So I still have questions on going backwards in time and trying to figure out what happened. Do you have experience in that type of tracing or looking back at different things like that?
So I can do a consultation. So the contact information is inside of the in the chat. So if you contact my team, then you just let them know, then they will put you in contact with me.
Okay. Thank you so much again.
You're welcome. All right, you guys. So you guys have a good rest of your Wednesday, a good rest of your week. And once again, we have the workshop next week. So I hope to see you in the workshop. We do the workshops once a month. So that's it for July. So jump on the bandwagon for July. If not, you're going to have to wait until August. And that's going to be the first week of August. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you is that you have lifetime access to the workshops. So that means that you can attend every single workshop. So you can attend July, August, September, October, November, December, whenever you want. You have lifetime access. So not only the course, but also the workshop. So a lot of our community members, they jump in to multiple different workshops because it helps them with retention, right? When you hear the information 2 and 3 times, then you're going to be the expert. You're going to be able to regurgitate this information. So that's why it's so important for you to be able to attend multiple workshops. And that's why we give you lifetime access. We want to do life with you. So I hope to see you in the community. We hope to welcome you, and we hope to see you in this upcoming workshop. You guys have a blessed evening. Love you guys.